start diving into it every once in a while. You guys might see me reach for my keyboard. So yeah, let's talk about this a little bit. The idea of optimizing your business ecosystem. It's funny phrasing in a sense, you might think, out there in the audience. We're calling an ecosystem, something that most people relate to that as, a weather system or something, right? Like the ecosystem of a jungle or something like this. But in business, this is every bit as important to understand how to optimize. We hope that we can relay that today. So let's go through some of the agenda items. All right, so I'm just going to sort of go through this real quick. This is what we're going to cover today. Why optimize? What are those hidden costs of traditional approaches? This is one of my favorite parts of what we're going to talk about today. And then addressing the challenges while increasing profitability. That one's also a big one. Solving for the SMB, small to medium-sized business. What does a connected system look like? That part is sort of the crescendo, if you will. And then we'll do Q&A and figure out how to explore the Xceleran options and discounts. All right, so why optimize? What are those hidden costs? And how do we improve upon that? That to me is a huge question. And let's start off, Matt, with going through what is an unconnected office? What does that look like? What does that mean?
Sure. Yeah, and I think a lot of business owners can relate to this. I'd like to start off with a story, if I can, Sean, about a study we did. 4 or 5 years ago, we were encouraged before one of our company meetings to go out and interview a small business owner, someone we knew, or look up someone in the local area. And I was sitting down with a gentleman who had, he was a carpet cleaner, service-based business, had multiple trucks, very successful, had really more business than he could handle. And he was kind of in this state of mind, do I continue to expand and buy more trucks, or do I just kind of stay where I'm at for right now? But what was interesting is we started talking to him. The question we were asked to engage these small business owners with is, show me how you run your business. And again, this was almost 5 years ago now. And the gentleman sat across from me and he brought out his phone. And I was blown away. And I'm like, you don't have a laptop or a computer? And he's like, no, I don't own a computer or a laptop. I do everything from my phone. And what was so interesting is, when I got started, I just needed a way to get paid, so he had a payments app. Then I got a little bigger, it was more than just me. So then I needed to start scheduling. And here's the app I use for scheduling. And then I was kind of, I needed to organize a little better for my accountant. So I started using Excel on my phone. And anyway, he took me through these series of apps. And again, super successful business owner, multiple trucks, more business than he could handle. And he ran everything from his phone. And that really got me thinking about, how do businesses start? And how do they, put together a software system? And a lot of times it's just like that. It's apps, it's Excel, it's different pieces. And I kind of break it down this way, what's the front, mid, and back office? And what we mean by that is, of course, front office sales, how is all the different ways I get sales? E-commerce, face-to-face, business to business, business to consumer. There's so many different ways you can reach out and get business. And so that's all kind of front of office. And then, accepting that payment. In between that and providing that product or service, of course, you have all the logistics, which is the mid office, the scheduling, the invoicing, the sourcing of the products that go into your service or the goods that you are delivering, and doing that in an efficient manner, maybe warehousing and all sorts of other things depending upon size. And then, of course, back office, once all that's done, how do you organize all that? How do you get the insights? How do you understand, hey, is my labor cost going up? Is my, is my supplies cost going up? How profitable am I? Am I hitting my, my different KPIs or key performance indicators of the health of my business? And how is my software serving that up to me versus me having to go to my accountant and only know about those important details every quarter or at year end, when sometimes you're so far beyond the point of, again, cost going up or whatnot, you don't have time to course correct. And so, that's what we're really talking about when we talk about a connected front office. Apps aren't bad. Apps are wonderful, but how do those apps connect to your front, mid, and back office? How do you just enter data one spot in your business financial software and it flow? Again, whether you're in office, out of office, whether you're reporting, whether you're working with your accountant, how do you interconnect all that? And if you don't have that connected today, again, totally understandable why. But then I would really have you think about that second question on the screen. What is the cost of keeping it separate? How many hours do you spend maybe in Excel or cobbling together information? Or how often do you really get that true profit and loss financial snapshot, those insights being given to you of again, what's happening with costs, supplies, the health of your business? Or, like me, again, my dad owned small businesses. We would work hard 10, 12 hours. Last thing I wanted to do when I was done working was sit down and do a bunch of books. And that's why I'm kind of passionate about this. And that's why I was so excited the more I saw technology could automate things. Back in the day, it was, instead of doing a handwritten invoice, having an automatic invoice, having a reoccurring invoice. Well, now, with AI and other things, pulling in all the information from your bank feeds, entering in data so you don't even have to enter it. There's so many things that technology can do, and so many ways you can free up time, either of your employees or yourself. So then you can kind of go and think about the next phase of the business. So super exciting, an unconnected office. Again, I lived in that. The question is there something better? And excited about talking about a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, and the examples are great. We've seen countless examples just like those. One that came to mind recently is a painting company. I think they joined us about a year and a half ago, and I reached out to them and asked them, how much time do you think you've saved since you started, using software versus the previous set of apps? And it is interesting. They actually went out and bought a computer as part of their connected office plan. But it really came down to the software because there were just a lot of unconnected applications not speaking to one another. And they told me 3.5 hours a week they're saving. That adds up to approximately 15 hours a month on average. That's a lot. That is a lot for a small business. So, you can see at the bottom, how much time could a connected office save one of our customers? It can be a lot. I think that's a little 8-man shop. So 15 hours is a lot on a small company like that. Great example too, with your own experience there. So let's see. We defined it, right? The unconnected office. So now, maybe we can tee up this education portion of the webinar and say, start to address the challenges while trying to increase profitability, because that's a really important section. If we can't increase profitability, then I think a lot of people would struggle with making that transition from an unconnected to a connected office. So let's talk a little bit, about that in this next section. And let's see. Let's get over there. Here we go.
Yeah, and what a lot of times when I'm talking to business owners, things they've personally told me as we're kind of sitting down, again, looking at their front, mid, and back office, just kind of talking to them about, hey, how did you get where you're at today? Where you're headed in the future? If you could wave a magic wand, take technology out of it. Of course, don't go too crazy, but how would you approach this different if you could rework it? And what's so interesting is a lot of times they tell me in this moment of kind of honesty and frustration is, I'm scaling my revenue as fast as my expense. which means, I'm working more hours, I'm working harder, I am getting more business, but my expenses are growing as fast as my revenue. And so it feels like I'm taking on a whole lot of extra
Right.
effort and time,
Right.
but I'm not making more profit. And that's frustrating. It's like I'm scaling my business, but it's at what cost? Like it's when do I tip into where I'm making more revenue with my bigger business? And a lot of times, that's when I stop and I say, okay, well, let's talk about efficiency. Let's talk about connectivity. Let's talk about how is your software working as hard for your business as you are working for your business. And a lot of times, sometimes business owners don't necessarily, like I used to work with contractors quite often. And, we would use this illustration where, hey, when you got to go buy a new table saw, $700, $1,000, whatever. Do you blink an eye at that? And of course, they would kind of laugh. No, that's my main tool. And I would ask them, well, do you think about your financial software? Do you think about the way you connect payments, do estimates, et cetera? Do you think about this whole connected office, for lack of a better term, like a table saw? Like how do you make it efficient? How do you make it make you money? How do you make it make you more profitable on each job? And then it was a very interesting thought to them. They never sometimes would think about this that way. And so this is where, again, in the educational piece of this, if you're, a telltale sign, if you're scaling revenue as fast as expenses, maybe stop and take a look at that front, that mid, and that back office. Take a look at what apps did you start out with? How are you doing things? Where are you doing things maybe manual? So many times talk to customers and they're still getting manual timesheets, manual estimates, manual payments, manual recordings of what happened out in the field. So then those things can be entered into a financial system.
Mm.
And then the hours it takes because spelling is poor, or it baked in the sun on the dashboard for a couple days before, or whatever. Coffee got spilt on it. Let's be real. We're out there working.
The classic, yeah.
Yeah. And then the time it takes that data entry person to call back out to each employee and try to fix those time cards and fix those, what should go on that invoice and those expenses. And so as you can see here at the bottom, that's where it starts to surface some of the problems of the non-connected office, the wasted time,
Yeah.
Errors, and again, sometimes those aren't errors because you typed it in wrong. Maybe it's an error because you couldn't read someone's handwriting, or you just had to guess, so that you could meet payroll or whatever the case may be, because you were kind of on a time crunch, or you had to get that invoice out, and then come to find out, oh man, you could have billed that customer for a couple more hours. So, that's what I would have people walk away is, again, if you want to be more profitable, if you're scaling revenue as fast as expense, or even if there's a bunch of variables, supply chains that we're all dealing with, that's getting better, but still supply chains are being an issue. Variable cost is an issue. How is your software or technology kind of helping you address and streamline that? And again, feeding those insights without you having to do a lot of extra work or tap on a lot of extra headcount and have them divert from more meaningful work to figure this out for you.
These are really important aspects of profitability. I've got a customer that comes to mind. It's a solar install company, and after starting to use our software, one of the things that they found that was a huge impact on them was manual tracking of hours versus automated tracking of hours. Mm-hmm. And they told me last week that they're up to $30,000 a month in accuracy, which goes directly to their bottom line. 30,000 is a lot, right? You're talking $350,000+ a year now. And it was interesting because when I first asked them that question, they weren't entirely sure. They asked me for a couple of days, get back to me, and so I did, and they added it up, and it was a lot more money than they were even expecting. So these can really, manual versus integrated, that can really affect your bottom line, your profitability.
Yeah. And just because you did it manual before doesn't mean you have to do it manual now. Just, and again, it doesn't mean that your business is not successful. I've seen businesses tremendously large and successful, and they're using things like Excel, but again, if we could reimagine it, what would that open up for the business? It's
Yeah, exactly. And I love the idea of, how can you improve even upon that? And that solar installer, as an example, was, now hungry for more things. So we're going to add more to their system.
awesome.
So benefits um, of the connected office. Let's maybe talk through those.
Yeah, so, like I said, ideally, what we're looking at here, and, we won't even make this, again, product specific, because, we want this to be usable, whether you go with our tool set or a different tool set, doesn't matter. What's important is that you get there, that you free up that time, you free up those resources, you get those better business insights. And so again, all the apps you use, whether it's time entry, payments, scheduling, how is that talking to your front, mid, and back office? If you're doing things with reporting, if you're a business owner and you can't be to the office often, or maybe, like you were saying, Sean, maybe you have a business that all your employees are remote, and so look at all the different apps and softwares you're using and how are they talking to each other? Is it a single point of entry that shares across the entire tech stack or across the front, mid, and back office, or is it not? And if not, then how do we get those APIs talking to each other? How do we get that software working, together, so that again, you can start to have a couple things. One is just not about freeing up the time, the resources. What's also super exciting about this with APIs and just a little bit about where the software industry is heading. So many back in the day, it used to be you shopped for one software vendor. You try to find a one-stop shop, right?
Yeah.
And businesses work really hard to solve everything. It was really tough. But nowadays, businesses have really understood, well, we're better together. We're better when we partner. And that's what's exciting. What you see here at the bottom part of this slide, it's not just one software. It's apps working with your front office, apps working with your mid office, your back office. It's the front, mid, and back office working together. And that's not just Excel. That's not just QuickBooks or Xceleran or whatever. That could be, again, 4 or 5 different systems or apps working all together. But the question is, how is that, one, connecting all the data like we already talked about, but then 2, how is it surfacing up those insights? How is it freeing up time, less data entry, less time to go run a report, less time to collect that time, all those, examples we've been talking about. We don't need to necessarily go back through them, but, if you don't have this ideal state today, question it, ask about, hey, how, whatever, if I'm using a scheduling software, and it's not connecting to the rest of my front, mid, and back office, is there a scheduling software now out there that does everything I need out of my scheduling software, but again, grabs that customer information, grabs that date and time, grabs the service tech who's going to go do that work for me. And then also, hey, it updates my invoice. It lets me know when he's done doing that work or she's done doing that work, so that I know, hey, now it's time to go ahead and ask the customer for payment. That's what's really exciting. And what's exciting about that last point I'll make here before we move on is you're actually building a foundation. Again, this will show the kid in me. It's like Legos. How they build one on top of the next. Think about your software like that. How can you get a foundation, but then have where you can add the right building blocks? If you need, again, a CRM, an FP&A software, whatever the case may be, how do you get something that it all snaps together? And that way you've future-proofed your business. All the hard work you did is not just to take you the next 6 months, year, 2 years, 5 years. It's actually a software that will continue to go with you well beyond that. As you continue to grow and expand. And that's really exciting as well.
Yeah, and another point to that for the SMB really is it's not just, and that's the positive side, and that's the side we all want to talk about as it's growing. But what if you have to contract your business during, certain times, right? Where you don't want to have a piece of software that has locked you in to a price that you can currently afford as you're growing, but what if you're not growing, right? So I think that's another thing to consider. Can it go up and down in as your business goes through cycles that it might naturally go through?
Yeah, it's a great point you bring up, Sean. We have quite a few customers who have went way upstream. They're a small to medium sized business growing at a really rapid rate. Thought the next 3 to 5 years was really going to crescendo, and like you said, sometimes it doesn't quite turn out that way. And maybe they've went upstream to an ERP, like a really large one, an enterprise level software is what I'm talking about here to be very specific. And those things are amazing. Don't get me wrong, but a lot of engineering, a lot of time, a lot of maintenance each year to keep those going. And what's exciting now, as you can see on the screen, is can you get the equivalent with the right apps and the right front, mid, and back office software, but do it about half the cost. So yeah, there's definitely that, a lot of times, but I love the point you're making. There's a lot of times where a business is looking to go up, but sometimes a business is looking to right size, not necessarily go down, but to right size their technology stack for where they're at. Exactly. And how the market is affecting their business. So great point.
All right, let's keep it moving because I think we might be just slightly off timing. So we'll keep it running here. Solving for the SMB customer for everybody here. SMB is small to medium-sized business. It's probably obvious, but just wanted to make sure everybody knows. And so, let me approach this by maybe just asking the question, and you and I can discuss each of these bullet points, right? So, how are companies currently approaching front, mid, and back office management in your experience? How do you see them currently approaching that?
Well, just to recap, a lot of times it's individually instead of holistically. What do I need to do to acquire a customer? What do I need to do to the point that, I get the handshake or I'm asked to send out the estimate. And they're just thinking about that, not necessarily thinking about, well, now how does that connect to, oh man, now I got to go, if I'm a home builder, I got to go buy some 2x4s or whatever, I just got business. Now I got to make sure I have the supplies. And then, I got to make sure I keep track of those supplies and what they cost me. And I know all those expenses. So then I can send an invoice out and collect payment. So again, just to recap, think about it holistically versus just what you need to do at that particular point of being in front of the customer.
That's a good point. This one's favorite of Gary's, the idea of what data / workflows should be considered for connecting and sharing and what should not. We see this all the time. What's your experience with folks in the SMB, the typical managing workflows?
Yeah, well, again, ideally, you have a solution that will manage those workflows. So, again, we'll say you're the owner, you should have access to everything, but maybe I'm just the data entry or payroll person. I should only have access to the data entry or the payroll that I'll be handling, not being able to go in and see all the books and all the other workflows. So, hopefully the user permissions are there so that the whole organization, the whole business has access to all the data, but only specific to what they need to fulfill their role. And then, there, again, certain things, credit card compliance, other things we could talk about. Yeah, there's certain situations where obviously you don't necessarily want to share data for certain reasons. You don't want to, memorize credit card information because of the security vulnerabilities or other challenges it presents. So yeah, they're definitely, we want to think through, this is a great question. And that's where, when you have a consultation with someone who's been down this path, they kind of know some of those pitfalls or those gotchas or things to be aware of. And that's where having a consultant to kind of bounce these off of can really help you with, again, optimizing this whole approach.
I agree. Okay, next bullet. So what are examples of things that are often manual today that should be automated? What have you seen out there that might be a good example of that?
Yeah, I mean, if you're having to manually match back all your bank transactions, if you're having to manually match back your credit card transactions, if you're having to manually collect time, labor expenses, costs against a job, and whether you're serviced or product based, those are the main things that hop out, but there's even more. You know, having to remember to run your reports each week or each month. You should be able to just tell your software, hey, shoot this report to my accountant every third Tuesday, or whatever you have worked out with them. There's so much that can be automated now, or even approvals. If I'm the accounts payable person and something comes in and it's over $500, and now you as the owner, Gary, Sean, need to look at it and approve it. Even things like that can be automated. So I would say, if those things were manual in the past, challenge all of that. There's so much that can be automated. It may surprise you.
Those are the top three I would have mentioned. And I see it all the time, just like you do. Those are the top three for sure. What's the ultimate value proposition for creating a connected ecosystem? I asked a customer this recently, but we'll see. I want to see what you have to say first.
Wow. Okay. Well, now you have me second guessing my answer. No, I mean, just and it is just the time that they save. It's the breath that they take of relief that, oh wow, now my software, wow, I don't have to micromanage this anymore because I know my software and I know my team's got it. As a business owner, freeing up a few hours in the day is just so valuable. And knowing that your team and your software's got it, that's what I would say. It's having that confidence is huge, and getting back those hours is really, I think, one of the biggest value props.
So we have a consulting company who has a managing partner, and it's a small firm. There's probably, I think, 7 people in the firm, and I think 3 partners. So a managing partner and 2 other standard partners, and that managing partner has to deal with all the administrative work. And they were telling me that the answer to this question was twofold. First, time that they save, right? So now they can either spend time with family on weekends or work on paying clients. And then 2, the key performance indicators, which allow them to track their business more accurately and more frequently. It's always in front of them. They're never off their KPIs. So interesting answer. And it aligned almost exactly with what you said. So all right, let's keep it rolling. All right. So these are advantages that we are putting out there for the SMB customer, solving for the SMB customer. Let's maybe talk about some of those a little bit here. So, one thing that I'm always, if we're coaching a company through their business, we're absolutely always talking about scalable revenue growth through the improvement of their processes. It's not just, that scalable growth, but improvement through those processes. And then I think the next one, customer engagement, is a real interesting one. We focus on this one a lot. And in this one, what we want to try to do for customers, or what our customers want to try to do for customers, or need to if they're not, is engage with those customers the way those customers want to be engaged with. So you might have to have multiple ways, right, for a customer to reach you. In my case, for example, if I can't make an appointment with somebody in an automated manner, I'm probably not going to do business with them, just me personally. In other cases, people might want a phone call, right? Those are probably opposite ends of the spectrum, and then there's everything in between. So those are certainly advantages to an integrated system. Let's maybe talk about opportunity management. This one, what this brings to mind to me is being able to manage opportunity, either to make a sale, upsell something, or perhaps a more efficient customer delivery, right? One of those 3 buckets for me. Reduction in cost, this is always one that is welcome to SMB owners. You always want to be able to reduce your costs if you can, and usually an integrated system can do that for you. I'd say probably always, actually. Improved operations, naturally, we want a smoother workflow. This is very much part of the Xceleran solution, but I think this should be part of any integrated solution. Real-time visibility, in the last slide, I mentioned that, one customer said those KPIs being right there all the time. I'm measuring myself, not just at the frequency that I thought I needed, but I'm doing it daily. I think that one's critical. Reducing errors and emissions. We talked about that a couple times today. There's lots of different areas for that, but coming to mind, payroll, very, very simple. Manual payroll, time tracking, brutal compared to automated, just totally brutal. And then usability, that one's huge. Is the software usable? Is it easy to learn? Are there tutorials? Is the company easy to access so that you can ask questions? So these are all the advantages I came up with for an integrated solution. What are your thoughts? Do you think I hit them all?
Yeah, I like to break this down into two things, and I'll be real short here, but this shows up different for an owner, an investor, or a manager, versus an end user. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times end users, they're stressed out, they're working long hours, there's a lot of employee turnover, when there's poor systems in place, because it's frustrating, and it's the poor end users who are really band-aiding and patching the system together and working their magic to make it happen. But it can be a lot of stress, and if they see a business that has a smoother system and they can still get the same recognition, same pay, but not have such a difficult system to use, they're likely to jump ship. So one, if you see some employee turnover, or if you see that there's long hours, it may be something to look at. But then stepping up a notch to the owners, the investors, the managers, if you're missing revenue, if Q1 revenue, your first quarter revenue slips into your second quarter, if that's happening often, and you start digging back through, well, is it because I'm missing supply chain? Am I sending out the wrong orders? Am I, what is hitting me and preventing my revenue from landing where it should be? Well, a lot of times, again, it's because some things are not integrated, some things are being done manual. So that's how I would kind of break that down by the different levels of where you're at in the organization, and how you may see this need coming to the fore, and also how we can help.
Such an excellent point. You nailed that one. That is such a really, really, really good point. All right, good. So I guess this begs the question, what does a connected solution look like? So Bailey was going to do a drum roll when I got to this slide, but I think we can't insert the sound of that. So we'll get right on to the last slide here, folks. And this is what a connected solution should look like. You have, this is our solution naturally, and next to our central SMB ERP, we call it, is the accounting solution, right? QuickBooks in this case. And Matt said that earlier today, where he said, you don't have to make all the software. Partners can work together, right? So that's a classic example of that right there. We're not experts in accounting software, but we're experts in putting all this software together. Some of it our own, some of it QuickBooks in this case. So, I think that the example here is to be connected to your data, all of it, no matter where it's coming from, automating that. So getting away from that manual process, being able to grow with it. Is it modular? This is a very modular system, for example. And can you grow with it? Or can you right size with it? Can you shift up and down as the economy shifts, or as your goals shift in your business? That to me is one of the more critical ones. That's a really important one, folks. Lastly, or second to last rather, is it easy to use? That one's also critical. Some software is super easy to use, some a little bit more challenging. Oftentimes it's all about, are the tutorials available? Are there videos to watch? Is the company accessible? Can you engage with them? And in our case, I can assure you, you can. Gary's going to go through some of that a little bit later. And then lastly, affordable. I sort of almost wanted to skip to that one because hands down, you will not find a more affordable, more modular system than what Xceleran offers. I know this, I've been doing this for a really long time. Our business model is just amazing. We can even get you to free software if we need to, and I'm going to just leave that right there. All right, so what do you think, Matt? Do you think I covered it with this real world example?
Definitely, definitely. And, like I said, that's one of the, just to reiterate what you said, one of the most exciting things working with you in this partnership is the affordability. So I'm going to just reiterate that because I think it's huge. Sometimes business owners, what stops them from looking at a solution like this is expense. And when you can find it very affordably, then why not look at it? Like it's just that much more reason to dive in and have a discussion.
Yeah.